In this film, you will learn for what reason you should train your dog go close by with its head lifted and why it is so important to hold its attention on the master when moving close by. What is the practical sense to spend time and efforts to train my dog go close by in sports style if I'm not going to take part in competitions? Apart from time and effort, such walking close by is considered to be a disadvantage. Sport dog does exercises on a straight field, and in life my dog and I walk across country, thus it's irrational to lift the dog's head. The dog stumbles and doesn't come out of this sport style. Nevertheless, this training has a point. We are going to discuss it in this video. Let's take sporting dogs out of brackets at one blow, in as much as sport is sport. These are the rules and it's not our task to argue with them. We'll talk about the usual discipline or training. Due to various circumstances, the dog doesn't always walk close by ideally. As a minimum, there are 3 levels of performance of the command heel by the dog. The dog can go close by strictly and correctly. It can also go close by and at that be more or less distracted. Also, it can go entirely not close by and drag the master on a leash. If even sometimes you let your dog follow the order indistinctly, then later in the course of time, this dog will work less firmly in other situations as well. To understand how the skill of going close by can be destroyed, it is important to consider that the master of the dog doesn't have any desire to correct and adjust it. When the master corrects his dog, this action destroys his illusions that his dog is very clever and obedient. Therefore, it is important to have a clear correctness criterion of going close by skill by the dog. This criterion should be obvious so the dog's master is not engaged in self-deception. Without clear criterion and unconsciously trying to save old illusions, the master allows the dog to expand the limits of acceptable variation of exercises. When we work on the close-by movement with its head lifted, then in addition to the dog's position next to the trainer's leg, here comes into sight an additional clear criterion. If the dog goes close by with its head lifted and looks upwards, we can assume that the dog works. When there is no such behavior, it can be assumed that the dog dabbles. Thus, it has to be stimulated and corrected. It is uncomfortable and unnatural for the dog to go with the head lifted. Is it so rewarding to torture both your dog and yourself for the purpose of reaching this criterion of correctness? Maybe it is easier to learn to identify the exact location of the dog next to the trainer's leg. You can learn by yourself, but the fact that we require unnatural behavior from the dog helps us to control it. The dog occupied by complex behavior is forced to focus more on performance of the command heel. The dog is loaded with work and it has less opportunities to be distracted by extraneous factors. Except that the dog is busy with work which requires increased control of its actions, there is also one more positive aspect. The dog that looks up doesn't see any distractions which don't get into its field of viewing. Of course, it can hear and smell, but it appears that the optic canal of perception is partially blocked. This circumstance makes it easy for the master to control his dog. Besides, the dog that looks up at that moment when conditional reflexes are no longer able to hold it, it's easier to show food or a toy, that is, to divert the dog to the unnatural, positive stimulus. Simply put, such dog is easier to be distracted and diverted to food or a toy. If we teach the dog a more complex variation of going close by, then we have a buffering zone between the correct execution of the command heel and failure to follow this order. When the dog gets sidetracked and doesn't follow the order, then it's well understandable because the dog loses concentration on the master, stops looking at him. At this point, its master can and should encourage it to execute the command better. Both the master and the dog understand what the mistake is and what the dog must do to follow the command heel and do it correctly. If we don't teach our dog to walk close by in sports style and walking without concentration is considered to be the norm, then the deterioration of following orders for a number of reasons is the way out from the correct position near the leg. That is, the decline of the ability to control the dog. Well, okay, but what about walking across country or when you have to go with your dog for a while? After all, it is difficult for a dog to go close by in sports style for a long time. This problem is solved either by using two commands or using the left and right dog position with regard to the master. You can use the command heel for the ordinary movement with the dog and an adjusting command fast if at this very moment you have to concentrate the dog on you at most. Another option was when the dog goes from the left side in a clear sports style, and such walk is mainly required during training, which takes place either at a site or in a field. From the right side, you walk your dog in the city. The last question: can we still not lose any sleep over concentration and train the dog to go close by surely without any trained bells and whistles? Yes, of course, you can stick to the old form of training. Still, at the end of this film, I want to list reasons why it makes sense to train your dog go close by. First, an additional clear criterion of correctness of skill performance. Second, uncomfortable and unnatural motions force the dog to focus on work. Third, the dog that looks up sees no distractions that don't fall into its field of viewing. Fourth, the dog that looks up can be distracted by the toy or food a lot easier. Fifth, normal walking close by becomes a buffer zone between correct and incorrect performance of the command heel. If you liked our video, subscribe to our channel for free and like us.